On Thursday, we saw President Cyril Ramaphosa deliver the State of the Nation address. The address outlined key government plans for efficient functioning in the year ahead. The President's address has been criticized for being too business-friendly, and opposition parties questioned whether the government has the muscle to resolve the credibility gap between his words and action. Now, weighing in on this assessment is political analyst Rebone Tau. Rebone, good morning. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Let us now just start off with your initial reaction to what we heard from President Cyril Ramaphosa on Thursday.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers at home. I think for me, it's what I did not hear in the speech, coming out clear. This is the second time in a row where President Ramaphosa says nothing on foreign policy, which is actually shocking. It seems like we no longer have a foreign policy in this country. Everything is more about domestic issues. I mean, this is a guy who just came back from the AU summit. He just came back from Mozambique, where we know that we've got troops that are part of the SADC mandate that are in Mozambique because of the war that's taking place there. And we've just lost a troop in Mozambique. Is he saying that life does not matter? He does not mention the soldier that died in Mozambique, There's also issues of xenophobia that we're seeing that are signs that there will be also xenophobia attacks. We've been seeing some incidences like in Soweto, of non-nationals, being told to leave and so forth. We need to know what is the position of the government around this issue of xenophobia. On gender-based violence, for me, he just said one line, and for me, what was also shocking that days before the SONA, we know of an incident that took place at Tembisa Hospital, where a nurse or assistant nurse was killed by her husband or partner that is a police officer, So for me, I'm disappointed in that regard that he did not mention these three key issues, and I mean, gender-based violence remains to be a problem in our society.
It definitely does, Rebone. So with that mentioned now, what more should he actually have said? I mean, we consistently hear from him talking about gender-based violence being a pandemic in itself. What more should he have said during the SONA?
I mean, for starters, the whole SONA, there's no clear timelines or plan of action. It was like, for me, just a wish list of the things that he was mentioning, but there's no clear, plan of action of how he's going to achieve any of those things that he spoke about, besides dumping things with business, that business will do this, and the government no longer taking responsibility or driving the agenda in this country. Seems like the agenda in this country will be now a business problem and no longer a government problem. But there's no program of action, in terms of timelines. But again, one of the things that you must remember that the ANC is going to its elective conference in December. I don't see most of those things being implemented, because they will be on election mode conference. The politicians, mainly, the ministers also will be, campaigning. He will also be running his campaign for second term. So this is just going to be an ANC year, and this was just a wish list. So I think we should wait for 2023. The real SONA will get it there. But for now, it just remains a wish list. So nothing is going to happen.
It seems year after year, Rebone, that we are seeing this wish list from government during the SONA by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Did you see any kind of a difference, really, from what was said last year to this year? I mean, this year, he said something around the issue of government does not create jobs. And so, as you've said, it seems as though he's just throwing everything in the arms of businesses.
I think which also what is very interesting about President Ramaphosa since he took over in 2018. I was reading a tweet on the night of the SONA, and that President Ramaphosa has appointed commissions, task teams, panels, 24 of them since he's been president in 2018. And what was interesting about the SONA, Mr. Ngosi, which I now call him Mr. Red Tape, because he said he will deal with the red tapes. And this is not something new, about the regulations within for small business or whether informal business. He said these things in 2018. So he's merely repeating what he said in 2018. And then we have seen that Mr. Mavuso Msimang is also going to come back, help with issues, around visas. So it seems like when he's also not able, when his ministers are not able to do what he thinks should be done, it's further appointing task teams. So what is the role of ministers? What is the role of the Minister of Small Business around the issues of the Minister of DTI? What is the role of the Minister of Home Affairs when now he's appointing other people to do those jobs? Because you've got officials in those departments. What are these officials being paid for? So it's a bit worrying that he's further appointing these task teams, and we have never looked at how much has been spent, on these task teams since 2018.
Rebone, you mentioned the issue of task teams. You say about 24 of them have been formed since he took office. And he's also appointed Daniel Minele as the head of the Presidential Climate Finance Task Team. What do you make of this? There really needs to be something else that can possibly be done following his SONA, the wish list, as you put it, that you don't necessarily have to always have task teams. Do these even work?
I'm not a climate change experts, but those in the climate change are saying so far so good in that regard. But for me, is that he needs to just reshuffle his cabinet. It's clear that his cabinet is not working for him in terms of what he wants to achieve as the president, because you can't forever have task teams when there are cabinet ministers who have to deal with those things on a day-to-day basis. But you are taking all the powers from them and you're giving them to individuals. So if he's not on a reshuffle, managing politics, I'll give you an example. The July unrest, a report that came out days before the SONA, saying that cabinet should be held accountable, should take the responsibility of those July unrest, So it did not even have to take that report, that was common logic, because they were not to be found, there was no leadership. For a few days, we did not know what's happening, where's the leadership, whether the leadership of the ANC, whether the leadership from a government point of view, So he's further appointing task teams on some things that are obvious, I'll give you an example. That report also talks about the weakness within the security cluster. In 2018, he appointed another task team when he started in office. That was led by Mr. Sidin Fumar, who is now his advisor on state security. That task team, that report was even declassified. It's in the public domain. People can read the report and the recommendations of that report. But we still had the July unrest, So he's just appointing these task teams. They give reports, whatever. But we're not also seeing much. The security cluster remains to be in a mess. He took it to his office that he will now be in charge of state security matters. And then later he shifts it to the minister and the presidency, So he's doing a lot of things that are not making sense, And the July unrest continues to expose the lack of leadership that we have in this country under him.
I'm glad you mentioned the issue of the July unrest, Rebone, because he also mentioned in his SONA that the vacancies within the security cluster need to be filled, and also the hiring of about 12,000 police officers.
For me, we need to be honest. We're seeing the footage, We're seeing even our officers were not really hands-on, And I'll give an example. There were places that were hit, I know, like Jabulani Mall. It's just opposite Jabulani Police Station, And people did not care. And the police were not that effective. The intelligence were not that effective, because you can see that this was organized crime, during the July and as whether they will put the vacancies or not, but there is no political will. If you listen to the minister, I heard him on the sidelines of the SONA, the relationship with him and the police commissioner, the relations are not good. He was even saying that I'm working alone here, I don't know where he is. So that means that it's not about the personnel also, but the relationship between the ministers and the officials.
And we also heard then in the SONA, the 350 grant that will be extended. It might sound like good news, specifically for those that rely on this 350 grant.
Well, for me, I'm even a supporter of the big basic income grant, and I'll tell you why. Sometimes we must not sit from a position of privilege, and not be in reality with the situation on the ground. Right now, that's why even government is pushing this thing of jobs to private sector, because, for example, we're sitting with around 50% of youth that are unemployed, And there's been studies done, that for any person to look for a job, it costs them 1.4 a month. So imagine if you are staying with your gogo, and your gogo is someone who's just getting a pension, and there's no other source of income in that house. So that means every time you have to ask money from gogo, to go whether to an internet cafe or to take a taxi to go and do an interview. So the reality of the matter that people do need assistance. But also, when I say I'm a supporter of basic income programs, that it must come with some source of skill development, young people must be given the skills because there are so many things that they can do in terms of plumbing, fixing windows, like in barracks, police stations, where you don't necessarily have to give someone a tender, issues of potholes, So if you give the young people the necessary skills, they can also stand up and do things for themselves, not just that you're just dumping them with money and saying, these people are lazy, they don't want to work, when the environment is not conducive.
And that is important, isn't it, Rebone, for young people to be able to get those skills. So do you think that with this particular SONA, you mentioned anything around that, helping young people to get the necessary skills that they need?
No, he did not. I mean, there's one thing that in the past that I know was spoken about within the party, and I think at some point in government, what we call the National Youth Service. That National Youth Service should be driven by defense, because defense has got the infrastructure to give those young people the skills, but also it will help to make sure that we build a patriotic, young person, a person who will love their country at all times, and know that they should always do what is right, in their country. But unfortunately, nothing was actually centered around young people. Because even I thought, when he spoke about the rural roads, that project should be central to the youth of this country. And he just said, no, it will just create jobs for locals. But nothing was said around women and the youth of this country.
Political analyst Rebone Tau, thank you so much for your time this morning, really just unpacking and looking back at what we heard from the State of the Nation address from President Cyril Ramaphosa.